Hello, my name is Hannah and we are doing a questions and answers today. We have questions about how on earth we are supposed to know how to price our artwork. We'll talk about how to give yourself a vigorous artistic education without ever going to school, and while being occupied by a day job. There's a great question about what it means to paint in a world filled with AI and Instagram tycoons. We'll talk about practical ways to stay inspired, or let's say driven. Inspired is kind of a floofy word. Then someone asked about the mediums I use and so much more. There are a lot of questions. Let's get into it. Also, two quick updates. One, I just updated my website. There are a lot of new available paintings. Go take a look if you want. And two, the rest of the France vlogs are coming very soon. First question. @MarchandBloom asks, I was wondering if you have thoughts, resources on teaching myself how to paint without going to art school while being occupied by a day job. Yes, I do. Okay, I'm making an assumption on what your goal is. I'm assuming your goal is to be able to paint from observation realistically. Very good news, limited time is on our side here. The plan I'm gonna lay out for you largely centers around intentionally limiting the amount of time we have to work on any one individual painting. I also want to add a second and a third goal on for you that I think anyone who wants to paint should have, but are often neglected. This second goal is to start to gain a little bit of an understanding about art history and also the contemporary art world. I'll share my favorite, least intimidating ways to do that. And the third goal is to get really good at running a personally fulfilling studio practice. A studio practice that keeps you inspired and challenged with painting for years and years to come. Being good at this kind of self-direction, that's extremely different from being good at technical painting. And long-term, it might be even more important. You know, this is what is going to help you avoid stagnation and creative ruts. First things first though, goal one, being able to paint what you see. Commit 1 month. Do a new 1 hour painting, only an hour, every other day. That's 15 paintings total that right off the bat you are committing to making. Now, why so many and why such a short time limit for each of them? Very often I see beginners make just these grand plans for their first painting, for this one painting they really want to do. They will spend forever setting up for it. They will spend forever working on it, fiddling with it, trying to fix it, hoping that the more hours they pour into this thing, the more they will be able to make up for their current lack of skill. Here's the thing though, skill is not gained through overthinking and perfectionistic fiddling. Skill is gained through repetition, consistently trying a lot of different times, not by obsessing over trying to make something perfect your first go. So we want to focus on quantity, these 15 short paintings. Quality will come with repeated practice. Don't get hung up on the first painting you try. Give yourself that repeated practice. Now, my schedule of 1 month, one painting every other day was a little arbitrary. You don't have to do that exactly. I would just encourage you to work out a schedule that involves making at least 10 short paintings. Maybe you decide on 2 paintings every Saturday for 5 weeks. Whatever works for you, just plan it out before you start and commit to it. Honestly, one of the biggest things school will give you is a sense of urgency, commitment, and deadlines. And since you aren't in school, you need to create those things for yourself. Now, to keep things simple, I would stick with simplest still lifes with 2 to 3 small objects and make it your goal in your 1 hour to just cover the entire canvas with simplified shapes of colors that match up relatively close to what you are seeing. There are a lot of tutorials out there you could follow that go into exactly how to do this. You know, take the 3D visual information and transfer it to simplified 2-dimensional shapes on your canvas. I do have my own and I will link it below. Good luck, you guys. Final note, your first paintings, they will probably be pretty bad, and that is okay. That can definitely be hard to see for our very sensitive little egos, but don't bail on the plan you committed to. Keep going. If you do all 10, 15 paintings, improvement will be inevitable. I promise. This brings us to goal number 2 for our self-teaching journey, which is to develop an awareness of both historical and contemporary artists, what they are making and how they are thinking. It is insane how much art is out there. For a lot of us, we might have 1 or 2 artists who we saw early on who initially got us really into painting. John Singer Sargent was definitely mine. But don't limit yourself to what you already know. Keep looking at everything. The stuff you like and the stuff you really don't like. Both will fuel you and allow you to be an educated voice in your artistic circles. Now, there are always museums and galleries to go to. Definitely go to them. I mean, that is the way to get exposed to art. My lesser known recommendation here, though, in order to get more acquainted with the art world, it's actually extremely well known. Whatever. My recommendation is to watch Art 21. Art 21, baby. It is so good. It's a PBS show, you can find it online, and it covers a lot of the biggest artists who are alive and working today. It shows their studios, it shows what they're working on, and it just shows them sincerely talking to a camera and explaining their practice. If you watch a lot of art videos on YouTube, I mean, this is like exactly up your alley. It's just better quality and way more famous of artists. Now, the main reason I would so deeply recommend watching is that they do such a great job covering a really wide variety of artists, a lot of whom probably are artists whose work you might run into at a museum or a big show in a big city and think to yourself, what in the world was this person thinking? You know, there's a lot of art out there, and a lot of it does very much fall into a category that feels extremely inaccessible and pretentious and weird to probably the vast majority of people. The show, though, it does a really good job of presenting this stuff to us in a very digestible, non-pretentious, welcoming way. It will just give you a great taste of all the many different ways it's possible to go about creating and thinking about art. I would highly recommend. Goal 3, we will get to in a second. I did want to quickly plug, though, I am going to be teaching an online painting class this coming January. We will be meeting weekly. It's not going to be a huge webinar production thing. It's going to be a small group. I really want to be able to give a lot of feedback for each individual person. There will be weekly demos and assignments, all focused around both increasing your technical skill set in terms of working from observation and on getting you out of your comfort zone a little. We will be working hard, okay? Please send me an email if you are potentially interested in joining us. I am compiling a list of everyone and will send more info out very shortly. Now, goal 3 for our self-teaching journey: learning how to run a successful studio practice in which you stay curious and inspired and critical for years and years on end. For most of us, unless we are currently in some sort of class, painting is something we largely do on our own. So you have to get really good at being self-directed. This includes generating ideas, coming up with projects for yourself that are going to deeply reward you, critiquing yourself, knowing when to pivot, seeing past your own blind spots. All this stuff that when you are in a school setting, the teacher or professor is hopefully really helping you along with. You know, I proposed a goal of 15 one-hour paintings, but after that, what's next? Learning technical skills is a great goal to start with, but it's very achievable and likely will only keep you excited and fulfilled with painting for so long. Without some extra personal vision or conviction, you might get bored and stop painting completely. You might get stuck in habits that make it really hard for you to ever make progress. You might resort to only painting hyper-realistic sunsets because you think that's what people will be most impressed by or what you think will be most likely to sell, rather than focusing on painting how and the things that your soul is longing for. So how do you get good at that self-direction? That's the question. I think a large part of it is just listening to yourself, listening to whatever little things you are excited about, and then crucially, taking those things extremely, extremely seriously. Let's say, hypothetically, someone was really excited about a tree. Actually, no, let's say apple, because tree is not hypothetical and I don't want to use myself as an example. Painting an apple is not all that special or inspired of an idea. It's actually a pretty boring idea. But if you are just pumped about the hyper-specific colors you found on this one specific apple, and you just love the way the light hits the top of the stem at exactly 4 p.m. in your kitchen, and the way it's almost symmetrical, but not quite, and you are gonna commit your vision to this apple like no one has ever committed to an apple before, you could make an extremely exciting, amazing painting. It's not about coming up with a great or special idea. It's really rare to come up with a great or special idea. It's about having a little seed a little thing you are excited about and listening to that and then committing to it with a curiosity unmatched by anyone else. And the amazing thing is that the energy that you give that apple, it's gonna come back to you times 10 from following this one little seed and, doing it with wide eyes and gusto. You are going to find 10 more things that you are equally excited about. A color relationship, a type of mark, a size of canvas, a type of lighting, all of which could be seeds, could be the starts of other future paintings. Listening. That is how you feed yourself, how you keep yourself interested for years on end. Now, conversely, criticism. Yes, it's important to listen to yourself. It's also important to know when to shut yourself up. Like after painting that apple for the 200th time and there's still no sign of your obsession leading to anything even close to resembling genius, maybe at that point you would be best off realizing that you're actually just turning into an insane, stubborn recluse, and it is a pastime for you to move along Yvonne to something else. Getting out of yourself, being able to be honest with yourself and critique yourself as if you weren't yourself, that is also a very important muscle to build, and it's really hard to do. Best case is you have trusted people around you whose opinions you can take seriously, who can give you critique. Think of the people in your life when they give you a movie or an album recommendation, you are so excited to go watch that movie or go listen to that music. They don't have to have any involvement with visual art, just somebody who you feel like when they experience a piece of art, they're really experiencing it. Those are the people whose opinions you want. But that is ultimately besides the point, because we are kind of assuming you are just on your own here in this scenario. So second best case thing to do, back to our goal numero dos, is to just consistently be looking at a lot of other art. Consistently be listening to a lot of other artists speak. This will for sure help to pull you out from your own very specific narrow vision. I would also recommend routinely taking long breaks from paintings. Don't feel like you have to finish something before you start something new. Whenever you get to a point where you feel stuck, or ideally right before you get to that point where you feel stuck on a painting, just lock it away for a month. Stop looking at it, stop working on it, come back to it a month later with fresh eyes. Pretend you are a stranger coming to it at a gallery, seeing it for the first time. This will help you to look at it and think about what it needs a lot more objectively. Last tip, this one almost sounds too simple, but a professor gave me this piece of advice a little while ago, and I think it's actually really helpful. Whenever you start feeling a bit too comfortable, just change something. It can be as simple as a brush, a color on your palette, a medium, the size of your canvas, whatever. Make introducing small changes a normal part of your routine. It can help you to just get in this mode of always questioning your little habits, your little routines that we all have. And that's it. That is how we are going to put ourselves through our own little painting school. You will be technically proficient. People will be dropping artist names and you will know who they're talking about. And of course, you will never be bored or not knowing what to do next in your studio. Holla. Whew. The later questions are going to go faster than this one did, by the way. Though actually, okay, one more thing about this question. You did mention wanting to do all of this learning while having a day job. This is so common, and I just want to share a few comments about that. First, you are not alone at all. The vast majority of artists, even the ones who make some money from it, even the ones who have amazing shows at amazing galleries, most of them have day jobs. In my personal life, not on Instagram, not followers on Instagram, people I know in real life. I know a lot of artists, definitely over 100. I can think of 3, maybe 4 who actually paint full-time. No side gig, no day job, no teaching, nothing else. Most painters are their own patrons. Most painters are supporting their studio practices with other jobs, which means for most painters, painting takes the space in their life that a hobby would take, which means you need to get really good at treating that hobby slot of time extremely seriously. Now, I feel silly saying all of that because I'm super lucky I don't have another job right now, though that may very well have to change, but I'll worry about that later. But at least for now, painting does not take the space in my life that a hobby would take. I do, however, have an extremely serious other hobby. Can you guess what it is? Rock climbing. Okay, listen. I just want to talk about hobbies for a second, okay? I am such a terribly average, mediocre climber. I take it way more seriously than my skill level would ever merit. And this is so silly, but like, I have gotten bummed before, wishing I was good enough to get to do it full time, like a professional athlete would get sponsored to do, right? Or wishing I had started when I was 5 instead of 25, thinking like, oh my gosh, I would be so much further ahead right now. And sure, I can be bummed about that. You know, you can be bummed that maybe you didn't start painting until you were an older adult. Maybe you're not as far along in the path as you wish you were, but I don't know. I think it's helpful to remember that whatever the hobby is, you know, whatever the thing is that we wish we could be dedicating more time to, ultimately we want to do that thing so much because we absolutely love it, right? And when you absolutely love something, this is the cheesiest thing I've ever said, but when you absolutely love something, it does not matter that it's just a hobby. It doesn't matter how good you are at it. It doesn't matter how far you can get with it, how far behind you feel. It doesn't matter if someone else is paying you to do it or not. It doesn't matter if you can only do it an hour every other day. A couple hours every week is better than nothing. It's just a beautiful force in your life that you should pursue and take seriously, even if, especially if, you have other responsibilities demanding most of your time. Like, pursuing the things you love, that will give you more energy. It will give you more time and energy in return. Take your hobbies seriously, is what I'm saying. It's like straight up disrespectful to yourself not to. Next question. I'm gonna go so much faster from here on out, okay? This is from Pauline. Oh my gosh, Pauline came to the workshop. She was amazing. And this is related actually to our 30-60 minute paintings that we are all definitely going to do. She asked, do you have any tips on setting up still lifes? I admire how you place so many elements, combine organic and sharp shapes, and manage color in yours. Yeah, I do really love the combination of like more geometric, hard edged shapes with more organic fluid objects. My biggest tip for setting up still lifes is not to worry so much about what the objects are and instead think more about the shapes and colors that are building those objects up. Forget about what the object is, just look at it for its formal qualities. Wow, I am capable of answering questions quickly. So fun. Okay, next question. @LizzieAndV asks, what is the best way to find inspiration when you feel stuck? Do you try to switch focus, do specific sketching prompts, etc.? I feel like everything I'm painting lately is so mundane and I'm struggling to keep creating. Lizzie, who cares? Like, who cares if everything you're painting is so mundane? Mundane paintings are great. Why do people keep freaking painting apples and bottles? It's because apples and bottles are fabulous. Like, I don't think you should be worried. Wait, I'm rereading your question and I definitely missed the point. Sorry. Yeah, at first I thought you meant that like other people were telling you that your paintings were boring or mundane and that was making you struggle to keep going with it. But now I see that I'm projecting onto you. And what you are actually saying is that you are bored with your own stuff, which is a very different problem and is an actual problem. Okay, what do you do when you're bored with your own stuff? I think you need to give yourself a problem. Give yourself a constraint that causes a little bit of stress. The good kind of stress. You know, you're not going to be bored when you're stressed. This problem or constraint could be a much larger canvas than you are comfortable with, a size that scares you. Or it could be a much smaller canvas than you are comfortable with. You could give yourself a tiny little canvas and tell yourself that you're only going to use 2-inch wide brushes on this tiny little canvas. That actually sounds incredibly stressful to me. I should do that one. You could make yourself use a limited palette. You could only use your secondary colors instead of your primary colors. You could give yourself a really short time limit for a big painting. You could paint a still life of the things on your desk exactly as they are right now, where you aren't allowed to do any pre-orchestrating of a composition. Little challenges, little constraints like that. This seems counterintuitive, but making things harder for yourself is actually really helpful. We are much better at being creative and working hard and being not bored when we have, a kind of constraint to bump up against, when we have a problem to solve. And no, I don't sketch a lot. Actually, I do keep a sketchbook, but it's mostly written notes, to be honest. Next question. They ask, when did you realize I'm an artist and my preferred medium is paint? Honestly, when I was like 12, which is when I first painted. And then they ask, when did you feel you were developing your own style? I feel like I'm developing my own style literally all the time. I think everyone is. I mean, that's just what happens when you pick up a paintbrush. It's impossible for your own particularities to not come out in a painting. I will say though, maybe we can talk about style, the idea of style, for just a second. While yes, style is constantly being developed anytime anyone paints, I don't think it's all that helpful for artists to actually be thinking about style or their style all that much. Getting too concerned or self-conscious about, propagating your style, it can prevent you from letting each new painting you do actually become what it needs to become. And it can very often, it can turn into something that feels like a forceful shtick rather than something that feels, authentic and genuine to your paintings. Next, what is something seemingly unrelated from your craft that absolutely is related to your process, fuel, energy, inspiration? Climbing, yeah. I won't shut up about it. It literally, it makes me feel like a kid. It makes me so happy to wake up. I was talking about giving yourself problems to solve earlier and that being really important. And climbing is like problem solving to the max, physical, mental, everything. It's so fun. Little paragraph about why I've connected with your videos. I love watching your videos because of the candid conversations and trains of thoughts that you share. For example, when you began to discuss the color crisis to when you arrived at your conclusion that you need a certain sensitivity to be able to not accurately but naturally portray colors. So good to be part of that conversation. I personally don't have professional art training, so I adore times where I feel like I'm getting valuable insight on the wisdom from artists with professional experience, training, etc. Oh my gosh. That's so nice. Sometimes I read comments and I'm like, wow, this person actually watched my video. like they were paying attention. They know something about me. And it makes me so curious who you all are. Like, LC Rad, who are you? I assume you paint. Do you have a website? I would love to see if you do. Seriously, everybody who asked a question, or honestly, if you've just ever commented on one of my videos, I think I've read every single comment I've ever gotten, so I know y'all's usernames very well. Please drop your websites. I would be so curious to see all of your guys' paintings. Next question. Oh, this is back to March and Bloom actually. They say, would love to learn more about your general supply list, colors for beginners, and how you would set up a studio with limited space and bad ventilation. Okay, general supply list. I got you. Here you go. I rambled about this forever when I was actually recording, so I figured I would edit that all out and just write it down for you. The big thing is definitely prioritize investing in the actual paint. General rule, just avoid any tubes or brands that say things like student in the title. Those tubes are normally the cheapest, which is tempting, but I hate to break it to you. Cheap oil paint is a disgrace to the name. It's not oil paint. It is the equivalent of slimy swamp water, okay? And no one, especially a beginner, can mix good colors with slimy swamp water. You also don't need the most expensive brands. Just go for something mid-tier. You can definitely be a cheapskate with your brushes. Big glass palette over handheld wood palette all day, every day. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and they will cut you a piece of glass to whatever size you want. This jar is really nice for cleaning your brushes. This box will help stop the spreading of smells a bit. And the last thing on the list is mediums. This is a little on what I normally use. The big thing to be aware of when working with mediums is the rule fat over lean. We'll go back to the regular video and I will explain what on earth that means. Mediums. This is my most asked question of all time. I get this question under every single video. I don't know why people are so curious. I guess maybe there's something a little mysterious about mediums. They come in all these cute little jars and I don't know, they feel like magical little potions. And it's like, oh, what does this one do? What does that one do? People say this one will turn your paint yellow in 100 years. People say this one will make your paint crack. People say this one will make your paint turn into gold. That one will bless your offspring for the next 10 generations. Yeah, no, they're not magic potions. They're pretty simple. Mediums are fatty substances that you add to your oil paint to make the paint flow the way you want it to flow. And yes, depending on how you use them, it could lead to your painting cracking or not cracking in the future. General rule for using mediums is fat over lean, meaning each time you put down a layer of paint, that paint should be getting fattier. Adding solvent to your paint, like Gamsol, makes it very, very lean, whereas adding any medium to your paint will make it fattier. Lean paint is stiff and brittle. Fat paint is soft and flexible. So imagine you have a layer of paint on the bottom of your painting that is super fat. You let it dry to the touch, and then on top of that, you paint something really lean, really stiff, really brittle. This bottom layer, yeah, you let it dry to the touch, but oil paint takes forever to actually fully settle. So that fatty layer, it's still malleable, it's still slightly moving about. The movement of that bottom layer will eventually cause that really brittle top layer to crack. Hence the rule, fat over lean. If each progressive layer of paint gets fattier, all the layers are going to be able to move and adapt together without any cracking. Science. Next question. Derek Sexton Art says, I'm at a crossroads. I am set to attend CU Boulder for fine arts, in which I would incur no debt, but I feel as though the program would hold me back. Should I defer my enrollment to work on all the LEED school projects I have while finding a better place to live, get educated? I feel like I know what I want, and a university art degree is just good to slow down my process. There are a lot more factors, but hopefully this is good enough. Love your channel. Derek. So I'm a bit late answering this, and I'm nervous to tell you my opinion because what if you decided to do the other thing? But to me, I mean, this seems like a big fat obvious don't go to school. You have other cool leads and projects. You don't think it's a good place to live or get educated. You feel like you know what you want and a degree would just slow you down. Okay, reading between the lines, I'm guessing the reason you may feel pressure to go to school is because maybe you've gotten a scholarship or some teaching assistant position that's gonna help you incur no debt. That's huge. Not being in that position is the number one reason most people should not go to school. So maybe you feel like because you are in this lucky position, you should take advantage of it and go. But I don't think that's a good enough reason. I don't. Sure, you won't have debt, but you're still investing years of your life into this place. And if there are other opportunities you feel more excited about, go for those. Learning, growing as an artist happens in lots of other places other than a university, and you will be so fine without it. Now, if you were between CU Boulder, which by the way, I have no opinion on CU Boulder, I don't know anything about their art program, but if you were between them and going somewhere where you would rack up a bunch of debt, but maybe it's a really prestigious program, I would definitely say probably just go to CU Boulder. I think for most people, the best thing to do is just to avoid debt as much as possible and work to be the kind of person who would thrive anywhere. The kind of person who's the prestige level of your environment just becomes irrelevant because you are gonna thrive and find a way no matter what. At Ruaua asks, my question for you is, have you always painted with oils? If not, what other mediums have you used, and do you ever want to try new medium? Another question, if you had to work in a different field and only paint as a hobby, what field would you like to work in? Yes, I've been pretty loyal to oil paints ever since I started, which is when I was 12 or 13. I have consistently drawn with charcoal. In school, I did a lot of random classes with other materials. The only thing that I would really love, I think, to come back to at some point would be woodworking. The past 6-7 years, the only kind of woodworking I've done has been in the context of building frames and stretcher bars for my canvases. But I would really love in the future to do more sculptural stuff with wood. I just love a machine. It's fun. And if I worked in a different field, I'd probably nanny. And that's a real possibility. Basically every month I'm do I have enough money? Can I justify doing this for another month? I don't know. I love kids. I think they're so fun, so cute, and so stupid. They're constantly just excited about everything, and it's enjoyable to be around. I like them. Next question. At Elsie Rad again. How do you value the price for paintings and how did you learn to do so? Okay, I'll take you through the whole journey I've had with pricing paintings. What it was like when I first started just selling things casually and how it's evolved to where I am now, where it's more of a business. Prices have changed a lot. And also the manner in which I go about determining prices has changed a lot. When I first started selling some paintings, I was in college and there was just this trepidation I would feel anytime I was asked for a price. I didn't know what it should be. Nobody knows. You don't know, your collectors don't know. Now, this is not so much advice, this is just what I did. I really leaned into trial and error to figure it out. I leaned into my gut. I tried higher prices, I tried lower prices. I paid attention to how I felt about those prices, and I didn't let myself get discouraged. You know, if I told one person one price one day, and immediately, based off of their reaction, thought to myself, well, oh crap, that was way too much or way too little to ask. You know, I figured each time that happened, I was getting more comfortable assigning numbers to things, and I was getting closer to figuring out what the actual prices should be. Now, what very often happened, this happens a lot to artists, is I was very often not pricing things at a point that was actually appropriately compensating me for my time. It's very common to underestimate how much time, how much work you are pouring into the things you are making. So I did sell some paintings where if I had done the math, if I had deducted my expenses, I mean, I would have been making like $5, $6 an hour, which is pretty bad. That's pretty atrocious. I will say though, I don't recommend underselling yourself. However, just to offer some perspective, because this is such a common thing for artists to do, it is almost 10 years later now since some of those sales. And looking back, I don't really regret it. Like, I don't miss any of those paintings. If I still had them, sure, maybe I would be able to sell them for more now, but I'm actually so glad that I don't still have them. I am so glad to know that those paintings have been displayed in other people's homes for this entire time. That is like the best thing I could have ever hoped for them. So much better than them sitting in storage with me for years. And if the price of that was me selling them for a little bit cheaper than I maybe should have, I'm actually very okay with that. By the time I was graduating college though, with this in mind, I was like, okay, I do need to change things though. I do need to be pricing things so that I'm actually making more than minimum wage. So I think I landed on like $20 an hour as a rate to aim for, which still is honestly a very low hourly rate for skilled specialized labor. But I decided that's what I was comfortable with, and I would slowly build it up in increments as I continued. Things got expensive. Even just with $20 an hour, things got very expensive. Art takes a lot of time and ends up being priced comparably to or even more than a lot of other luxury goods. If you are a young artist who wants to be selling work, you kind of just gotta get comfortable with that now. Your stuff is going to be freaking expensive. You will get many wide-eyed, surprised reactions from people when you tell them your prices. Be reassured, 9 times out of 10, those people are reacting that way, not because they want to personally attack you, not because they don't value art, not because they don't realize how many years of training goes into any one individual painting. They are having those reactions because most people just don't have the money for luxury goods. Which is fine, but I don't have the money for luxury goods either. I get it. If we want to get compensated fairly though, we do just have to get really comfortable seeing really big numbers attached to the things we are making. Or of course, you know, you can decide that you just don't care about being profitable in this realm. And honestly, maybe that's a very healthy, noble thing to decide. Clearly not what I've decided, but to each their own. Okay, so this method of pricing, this hourly rate-based pricing, I did that for a couple of years. When I started working with galleries more though, I stopped doing that and I switched to pricing things purely off of canvas size. And this is definitely the most standard, proper way to do things. Sometimes 2 paintings of the exact same size can take wildly different time frames, and the exact time frame, it doesn't really matter to the collector. It certainly does not determine how valuable of an image it is. So pricing just based off of size leads to a lot more consistency for everyone. The prices continue to slowly get higher, but at this point I had years of selling paintings under my belt. I had a lot of trial and error over with. I knew what felt fair to me, and I knew what other people seemed willing to spend. One last little tidbit, something I do. I think a lot of artists do this, but I have noticed I think I do it much more dramatically than a lot of other people, is I really heavily discount paintings the larger they get. I'm talking my biggest paintings, like ones that are like 4 or 5 feet in one direction. I have a weird formula I use where smaller things end up being a little bit more per square inch and larger things end up being a lot less per square inch. And I just do this because it's always been a little bit harder for me to sell larger things. There's just less of a demand for them. They are also more inconvenient for me to keep in storage, so I am more incentivized to get those paintings out. So yeah, I mean, keep that in mind if you ever want to buy a big ass painting from me. It will still be extremely expensive. I don't want to get your hopes up, but it will be significantly less per square inch than any of my smaller paintings. Next question. At Oscar. Oscar, he has left so many nice comments on all of my videos. I always appreciate them. Thank you. He says, honestly, it's quite fun discovering you a video at a time. How about this? Do your best or favorite paintings come from when you really enjoy the process, or when it's difficult and you have to fight it and yourself to get a result? Really good question. I mean, yeah, some amount of tension is really good for creative problem solving. I was saying that earlier. I think a little bit of friction is also a really good sign that you are pushing yourself and getting to something that's a little bit beyond yourself. One specific example of this happening for me, I think, is the dining room piece, which I've talked about before on here. That painting got to several points where the paint was getting so thick and built up. There were so many layers, so many ridges, so many little mountains of paint everywhere, where it was just it was kind of frustrating because I was trying to add moments of really tight, refined detail, but I just could not lay brushstrokes down the way I thought I wanted to lay them down because of everything, because of all the textures going on underneath. That ended up being such an amazing problem for me to have, though. I ended up having to find a way to work with the surface through scraping, breaking the surface down in some areas, and then through just adding thicker and thicker paint in other areas. And ultimately, I think that made the painting way more successful and interesting than the nice, refined, detailed image I had imagined it becoming in the beginning. This was definitely a case of the painting having a much better idea of what it wanted to be than I had, and ultimately me going with what the painting wanted, and I guess fighting against my own ideas for what the painting was supposed to be, was the best possible thing I could have done, and led to a much more successful image. More successful, ultimately way more enjoyable, and yeah, a little more frustrating. So I guess to answer your question, I guess the best or favorite paintings come from when the process feels the most full of enjoyment, wonder, appreciation, and like a little bit of friction is normally included in all of those things. I got a little cold. Okay, next question. At Bunker Boncoeur. Hi Hannah, I've been following you for a while now and you and your work are such an inspiration. I love your sense of humor, the way you share your process, your thoughts, etc. Oh my gosh. Stop it. Stop it. But actually don't. I love a compliment. Please keep them coming. Lately, I've been wondering about what it means to paint today in an era super saturated with images and now AI. I'd also be interested in hearing your opinion on the contemporary art scene and where you position yourself in it. I'm curious how or if those kinds of questions shape your relationship to your work. With love, from France. France! Okay. What does it mean to paint today? To dedicate hours upon hours to slowly hand-making images in an era in which we can enter into never-ending visual vortexes, be bombarded with millions of images and videos every day from our couch while exerting absolutely no effort. In an era where there are loads of artificial intelligences that can create their own images in a matter of seconds. I mean, I think painting means everything. Like, what an amazing, weird thing to get to do. I'm obviously majorly biased, but I think deciding that, okay, I'm gonna interrupt the flow of the infinite feed. I'm gonna stop overwhelming my senses with all of these pictures and videos that I'm gonna forget 30 seconds later, and Instead, I'm gonna do something insane and dedicate hours and hours to completing one little drawing, or deciding I'm gonna dedicate my weekend. I'm gonna travel to a new city to go to one specific museum to see one specific painting up close in person, or deciding to spend your money to collect one specific piece of art that you really connected with. Deciding to dedicate time or space or energy to select images like that, either as a maker or as an appreciator, that is a very powerful thing to do. Beautiful pieces of art, they will reward being given space and time. They will actually offer you something, give you persistent beauty in your life if you let them. But that does actually take effort on our part. We can't scroll by a bunch of cool paintings on Instagram for an hour or give a machine a prompt and expect those images to do anything lasting for us. Anything that comes so easily is also going to be moved on from and forgotten super easily. A full, lasting experience of beauty, it requires some investment from us. And we get to choose to do that. How great! We get to choose to give time and intention to what we are making, to strive to make things of quality, strive to make things that are actually worth investing in, that make the robot AI created stuff so obviously look and feel like robot stuff in comparison. We get to choose to at least try to make stuff that does encourage a lasting experience of beauty, rather than things that are ultimately just in service to an algorithm, things where their biggest purpose is to be a couple of distracting seconds for somebody to scroll by on a screen. So I don't know, I think all of those decisions are very ennobling, and I think it's amazing to get to paint in our current world, to try to keep making good art. It means a lot. And the second part of the question was my opinion on the contemporary art scene and where I position myself in it. I really like the contemporary art scene. I think if I had to choose any era to be a painter in, it would definitely be this one. The general feeling, as defined by people who know a lot more about art history and the current art world than I do, is that there isn't so much emphasis on one particular style, one particular point of view, but the emphasis tends to be on each individual artist doing what is authentic to their identity and doing it sincerely. And I love that. In a lot of ways, my painting is incredibly traditional and it would fit into a lot more historic eras. But that being said, I'm quite happy to be painting in a time where I feel both perfectly fine and accepted painting the way I paint. Like, it's not like there's some war on traditional or representational painting. And I'm very happy that it's a time where I don't have to paint this way. I get to do it because I like it and I do it sincerely, and that's it. Okay. There were two more questions that I really wanted to answer in this video. They are both related to a lot of the traveling and moving about that I've done, how that has been possible while doing art, and also while having a wildly inconsistent income. This is incredibly long already though, so I'm gonna stop here. I have a lot to say about those last two questions, so I will record and upload them soon. Thanks.